Hello, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Tate Modern. My name's Richard Martin. I'm a curator in the public programs team here at Tate. And I'm delighted to welcome you all to this very special conversation between Tracey Emin and Jonathan Jones. Tracey Emin, CBE, is amongst the world's most influential living artists, and we're thrilled to welcome her back to Tate Modern tonight. At last count, 34 of her works were in the Tate collection, and she's represented in museum collections around the world. Tonight, we're going to particularly focus on her practice over the last decade, which has encompassed drawings, paintings, sculptures, embroideries, neons, video stills, and installations. Thank you for being here tonight, Tracey. Joining Tracey in conversation is the author and critic Jonathan Jones, who's been writing for The Guardian since the 1990s. As you may have read in The Guardian just this week, Jonathan and Tracey recently spent 3 days together at her studio in the south of France, talking art and books and dodging snakes and hornets. Perhaps we'll hear more about this in a moment, and there will also be a time for questions and contributions from all of you later in the discussion. We're here, though, this evening to celebrate the publication of the beautiful new book, Tracey Emin Works 2007 to 2017, published by Rizzoli. The book features an essay by Jonathan Jones, which he's described as, to quote, his hardcore study of Tracey Emin. And both Tracey and Jonathan will be available to sign copies of the book, but only this book, I should emphasize, after the talk finishes from 8 until 8:30, and that's in the foyer just next to the auditorium. I want to thank Sophie Leardet and Laura Eldridge at Rizzoli for their support for tonight's event, as well as everyone in Tracey's studio, especially Emma O'Rourke. I also want to thank all of you for coming. I hope you enjoy the evening, and please join me in welcoming Tracey Emin and Jonathan Jones.
Hi. Well, actually, with the signing, I think Tracey's doing the signing. Actually, I'll be on hand if anyone's very eccentric. Obviously, we're going to talk about all kinds of things, I should think. Can I start by actually asking you something not about the book and not about any of the slides you've got here, but about a painting I saw yesterday in the Frieze Art Fair. I don't know if anybody's been to Frieze or is going to Frieze, but in the White Cube stand, you've got some fantastic works. But there's a painting called, I think it's called She Came to Me in the Night, and that's 2017. So it's newer. This is clearly something which is famously central to the art of Tracey Emin. Your art is a diary. It's you. It's often seen as almost unmediated kind of expression of yourself. Nowadays, more and more that's done in terms of drawings and paintings, as well as and sculpture, as well as in the kind of neons and things that you're famous for. But that painting, it was quite a powerful and moving, strange painting.
Hello. First of all, I'm going to say something. Just before when you were all coming in, Jonathan and I were talking, and he's going, wow, he said, I've had such a brilliant reception for the book. He said, I've never had such people coming up to me and saying anything like this about any other book I've ever done. I said to him, it's not your book. It's my book. But I would say, I would say if anybody, I think for the idea of Jonathan and I both signing the book, I think that's an opportunity you should not miss, because I feel so privileged to be sitting here with Jonathan, because I think, for me, he's one of the greatest writers at the moment, and as far as a critic is concerned, he does not hold back on anything. And there is a number of reviews, I would like to quote them word by word, but Jonathan has not been so kind about my work. So it's really amazing when a critic comes round and sees your work differently or has a different opinion of it and then spends the trouble to get to know you. And it's like a whole door opening. So when we did meet each other in France, it was only the second occasion that we'd met, and the first time was just for a 20-minute conversation. And in France, we were together for 4 days at my house, which is really remote. So we could have ended up literally killing each other or something. But as it was, we had this really amazing conversations about art and why we both loved art. So I hope tonight's conversation, because it's not just going to be about, as Jonathan said, what we're going to see, but it is actually going to be about my work. So, but I've got to say I'm a bit thrown by that first question, because that painting that you referred to, I only finished on Saturday. And, yeah, my gallerist was there with a whip, getting it all out of me. But the point is, that painting, I finished it on Saturday, but I've been painting it for, I think working on it for maybe, 5 years, with the grounds, with the washes. And when I come back from France, I really, really wanted to make a new painting for Frieze, but I'd left a lot of my paintings that I'm working on in France, and I have a rule that what I start in France has to stay in France, because I've made a mistake in the past of bringing it back to London to work on, and I just completely muck it all up. So I come back to London, I asked Harry at my studio to put out, maybe 6 or 8 paintings that I'd been working on before I went to France. And I walked into my studio and couldn't relate to any of them. It was kind of bizarre. And what had started off as being this very, very pale blue, evocative, sort of moody blue painting ended up being a very sort of dynamic red painting of a figure of a woman laying on a bed. And it was completely finished last week, except I just decided to change a little bit of it and completely ended up painting over the whole thing, and then completely doing a different painting, a different picture, and that's what you'll see if you go to Frieze at White Cube. But it is a different kind of energy, and it is a different kind of painting, but it's real, because what I won't have anymore in my work, I want the painting to tell me something that I didn't know. There's no point in going to a fortune teller and telling them all about yourself, right? You're not going to get anywhere. And it's a bit like that with me with painting. I want the painting to inform me something about myself that I didn't know. And so that's why they're much more blurry and a lot more abstract now, because it's leading me and I'm not sure where it's going. And what's interesting about that painting is it's a cross between somebody I find beautiful, it's a cross between myself, and it's a cross between my mother. And it's about all these things which are feminine. And the most bizarre thing about it, which sounds really peculiar, I'm always influenced by colours and tones and things that are around me. And I'm thinking, why is there this sort of red and white stripe painting? It's red and white stripe. It's the colour of my nightdress, my favourite nightdress. And that's what it's about. It's about nighttime, and it's about being alone, and it's about what you think. And it's also to do with, after my mum died, of having some kind of visitation from my mum. But also it's about a heightened level of femininity as well, and that's why it's in these pink and these red colours. And it's also about, definitely the painting leading me. So
yeah, no, it had to, well, it said a lot of that to me, and it was a sort of strange, haunting image. But I mean, anyway, sort of just stepping back for a moment, I mean, because, well, obviously you may all have followed Tracey's work very closely, but we're sitting here in Tracey Emin, and actually what you're talking about is painting. It's quite detailed stuff about being in the studio and painting. Obviously, this is one of the things I found out much more about you over the last year or so in France and in London as well. But that you are an artist who is very closely engaged with working with your hands, with drawing, with painting, and with the stuff of paint, and letting it more and more in a way that seems more and more free, if you like. And that's not what people think of you, not what people expect from you, is it? It's still. Do you have a problem with that, or?
I do have a problem with what people expect of me, because I think, and also people forget that I've kind of grown up a little bit. I'm 54 now, And often we get sent things at the studio, like I get sent clothes or I get sent things, and they're miniature clothes for a miniature person that was 20 years younger than I am now. And there is somebody looking through some archived photos of me thinking, oh, we'll give her, you know, a free dress or something. And they're looking at this person who was a size 6, and they're looking at this person who was 20 years ago. And it's like, oh, actually, I'm going to go back to the bed. So this is my bed, and this is me from 1998. Everything on this bed is from 1998. But I still stand by this bed, but as me from the past, not as me now. So I recently installed the bed in Margate, and it opens next week. And it's so strange. Every time I put the things out, it is me, but it's not me. It's a me from, it's like a ghost of me. And I think I had the same problem with my career. I think a lot of people, I think sometimes when I think if I show in New York or somewhere, people see my name and then they walk on the other side of the road and they don't bother to go and look. They think they know it all. They think they've seen it all. But they haven't, because, and especially I've done many shows around the world that people don't see. Like recently, I just had a show at Chateau Lacoste in the south of France. Very, very beautiful place. Extremely beautiful gallery, which was a decade of painting, 10 years of painting and some giant bronzes. People go to this show and they go, oh my God, I had no idea you could paint. I did an MA in painting at the Royal College of Art. I've never been a closet, maybe I've been a closet painter, but I've never been a secret painter. I've never been secret about anything in my life, except people just didn't see my paintings because I might have just shown one painting. Like with the Turner Prize, when I showed my bed, there was some very, very fragile, gentle watercolours, which I showed, which later got shown alongside Turner's watercolours at Tate Britain, which were taken very, very seriously. But because of this, and I also think my personality doesn't always help me, and also things that I've been known for, like whether it was getting incredibly drunk on television in a discussion of is painting dead, or, little moments like that in my life, which might actually eclipse my whole, art practice.
Now you say that, of course, that's exactly like a painter, isn't it? I mean, all that sort of stuff is much more like Francis Bacon. You're much more of a gilded gutter bohemian like Francis Bacon, or than you are like Marcel Duchamp. In fact, obviously, conceptual art's quite rational. Painting is a nutty thing to do. I mean, it's a wild thing to do, and you do paint in a wild way, don't you? You slap paint on.
Yeah, I'm really. There's a really good thing on. I think it's on YouTube as well, and it's on quite a few Instagram things of me painting. And it's very funny because I'm wearing this cardigan of mine, and it's got the word peace on the background, as in, P-E-A-C-E, being peaceful. And there's this beautiful ground of a painting, and I just completely attack it, screaming, just going crazy. But I didn't realise I was being filmed. And it's actually quite funny, but it shows how I can paint and what a kind of guttural thing it is for me. And when I paint in the studio, I lay down on the sofa, and I lay there for like maybe half an hour, and then I get up and I get the paint and I go, Aah! And then I go back and paint again, or else then I suddenly get a cup of a red wash or something. I go, like that, and throw it at the canvas and just watch it all drip down, like this. And I have this kind of like strange, kind of visceral kind of reaction to the canvas. First of all, the canvas scares the life out of me. The next thing is I can have a really, very, very beautiful abstract thing going on that's so lovely that just needs one of my drawings on it, just one something. And I can't do it, and it stays like that for like 5 years. And then I might take it out of the rack, hang it up, and then just completely destroy it and attack it. Or another time I might actually finish the painting, might actually show the painting, and then just before it gets sold or something, say, it can't be sold, I want it back in the studio, and then I paint all over it. Because I can't stand the idea with it. I realise I made a mistake and it's not finished. Or it is finished, but it's not good. That's the worst thing, I think. And there's lots of things you can, and when I leave the studio at night as well, I can't leave the studio in case I get run over or something, and then as I'm going down, people are going, yeah, this painting was definitely finished. I'm going, no, it wasn't. No, it wasn't. Or this one's really good. No, it isn't. I'm going to paint over it. So always when I leave the studio, I have to leave the studio in a state of it is totally unfinished and you can see it. Or, you know, I have to paint over it or make it better. So even if it is unfinished and I get run over, at least it kind of looks all right.
Yeah, I mean, and this is the art for you is your life. I mean, art is life. I guess this is one of the things I've come to gradually understand over a long period, and and really get to understand since I've known you better, that you're someone who's genuinely driven to make art. You couldn't live without art. This is passion, and it's not about the finished object and selling it. It's about the process of that you have to be doing that. And that's
I think that. So people, with the success of my work in terms of working with really good galleries and the commercial success and the financial success, and let's really use that dirty, vulgar word, being rich through my work. You know, what people don't understand, I'm rich through my experience, through my love of what I do. I never expected ever in a million years when I was young to be able to make a living from being an artist, let alone achieve what I've done. And if you were to try and make money, you would never be an artist. It is really not a good idea, because I had to go for about 10 years with absolutely nothing, you know, and really just keep believing in what I was doing, And now I think that it sounds kind of like really weird, but I actually think often that the money thing can get in the way of making good art. It really can, because if you're too distracted by the rewards of that financial success, you can actually miss, for me, the spiritual goals or what I'm trying to achieve within myself. And talking about the first painting, for example, I'm looking for a journey through what I'm doing. I'm not looking for an external reward. I'm looking for the internal reward that it gives me. And if I don't have that, it isn't a sense of dissatisfaction, it's a sense of profound failure, almost suicidal failure, like a level of failure where I find it hard to live and breathe. I feel like my life has come to a crashing end. I can't leave my studio in that state of dissatisfaction, or dissatisfaction actually is an understatement. You know, if I can't walk away from something which I think is truly bad, I can't, because it's like almost like a battle with my soul. You know, it's more important than that. So, in what Jonathan says, it's really important for me. Art always has been important. You know, it's all I've ever done. I've never done anything else. So,
yeah, I mean, I've seen at your house. In England, I've seen these lovely sort of ceramic things that you made when you were, what age?
13.
13.
12, 13.
12, 13.
Yeah.
I mean, they're very impressive. I mean, clearly, these are sort of ceramic still lifes. They're little still life, the kind of thing you might see in Naples, actually, on a street stall, but obviously they were made in Margate in the 1970s. And I'd have to say that I would have thought that an art teacher who saw those would say, you know, you're a genius. You know, I mean, obviously you did get to art school, but I mean, really, you clearly always had a very powerful natural gift. I mean,
forget anyone that's been to any of my talks before or heard me say this. I left school when I was 13, and I managed to get into a degree course, got a first class honours degree, and then I did an MA course. I've now got 3 honorary doctorates. I'm a professor, you know, everything. And I left school at 13. But the good thing is, when I was at school, I had to go back by law 3 days a week between the age of 13 and when I was about 14, 15. And what I did in those 3 days was basic English, basic mathematics, special PE, because I was really athletic, and art. I did art for about 2 days a week, and the art teachers were really exactly what Jonathan said. They said, she's a genius. They really thought I was gifted. And it's important that being at school, that was installed in my head at such a young age, and I didn't waste my time. doing lots of other things that I was moderately okay at, like history I really enjoy, you know, writing I love, but I wasn't going to hang out in the English class, you know, because I couldn't spell. I concentrated on art, and that's all I've done all my life is work at art. And if I can't be, let's just say, that was a very nice introduction, by the way, but a slight exaggeration. But if I can't be a really good female artist somewhere at the top of my field, because it's for the last 30, 40 years, that's all I've done. And there's very few people that have only ever done one thing in their life. A lot of people, they kind of change professions or they go other, you know, they do different things. But I never have. I stuck to it.
But obviously, of course, you are also famous, very famous, for changing the definition of an artist and popularising the idea of the ready-made and the conceptual art. I mean, and you know, you're absolutely one of the most eloquent exponents of that. I mean, you haven't turned away from that, have you? I mean, you don't sort of. I mean, obviously,
no, well,
the bed is.
Yeah, I haven't got any image. I've got a show on at the moment in Brussels at Xavier Hufkin's gallery, and it's probably the best show I've ever done. And because the work is all, most of it is, all of it actually, on different levels, is completely driven by emotion, 100%. There isn't anything that doesn't look emotional in this show, and it's kind of really charged up and really passionate and completely over the top in lots of ways, but it also has a kind of coolness to it. One of the works that I've shown there is a photograph. The photograph's about, I think it's about 2.5 meters by 1.5 meters, and it's of a young woman on a bed, completely unconscious, half naked, and you can't tell whether she's dead, you can't tell whether she's just been kind of totally fucked and really enjoyed it, you can't tell whether she's been raped, you can't tell whether she's unconscious, you just don't know what's actually happened. And it's kind of very alluring, and the colours are like pink and purple, but it's really, really large, and you can see this, you see too much in this. It's embarrassing, this photo, you see too much. And it's a photograph of myself that I found, that we found in the studios in amongst some books. And it's from the 1990s. And I blew this photograph up, ginormous. But as a tiny photograph, it's just a bit smutty. But really big, as this, it isn't a ready-made, it's because I changed the scale of it, I changed the meaning of it. And so I still use things in my work, which I think some people may consider not to be art, or may consider to be provocative or shocking or whatever. But alongside the painting and alongside all the other elements, it actually makes a lot more poetic sense than when I was younger. Because when I was younger, I didn't have, sadly, whatever intellect or what knowledge I had, it was kind of like, it's not like I was ashamed of it. I didn't want to show off about it. I wanted to tuck it away and hide it. I always say this, it was like being the real naughty girl in the back of the class. I kind of was happy with that. And now I'm not happy with that, you know. Now I actually want to show that I'm actually quite brainy, and even though I'm not calculated, I do know what I'm doing, and I do love what I do, and I really work at it. And having a kind of intellectual pursuit behind what I do as well isn't damaging, and it isn't fake. It's true. It's allowed.
So actually talking, intellectualism, intellect.
If I go back to that last picture, it's a good example.
Well, Okay, so this is The Descent from the Cross by Rogier van der Weyden, and the original's in the Prado. And there's a huge double spread of it in the book, which is fantastic. I'm really pleased because the book's going to be here at Tate Modern, which means that a painting by Rogier van der Weyden will be, in Tate Modern Bookshop, which is nice, and as well as obviously Tracey. But I think, how did you get in? How did you discover? How did you find out?
Well, I know about the painting, of course, but I was in Hong Kong. I was in bed. I was in my room, and I felt really kind of strangely sorry for myself when I was watching BBC World, and a whole kind of 1-hour documentary came on about this painting, and I was so mesmerised. I was thinking, wow, that is so beautiful, that is so amazing. And at the same time, in my studio, I had this like 1960s porno photo that was hand printed of a man going down on a woman, and she's laying on a sofa and she's got her arm over the couch like that. And also, at the same time, somebody had hugged me who really meant a lot to me in a very similar way. They'd hugged me like this. And I wanted to do I'd done some drawings of this hug, this position of this kind of strange angled kind of hug. And then I realized that it all completely worked together. But I didn't try to do or emulate this. I had already made the pictures. And for me, the similarity and the coincidence was fascinating, because I realized that I just go around scooping up all this art and all this art history and storing it inside me, and then it all comes out some way later or somehow. And so that is kind of, I've got millions of examples of this, but this is just, for me, quite an obvious one.
The crucifixion and religious imagery and that intense, tragic imagery of Christ's body, I mean, that's something that comes into your nudes quite a lot.
Yeah, I mean, when I was at the Royal College of Art, I did a whole series of paintings based on the painting. I used to get up really early in the morning, get the bus from Elephant and Castle, get off at Trafalgar Square, go to the National Gallery, go downstairs in the basement, look at all the icons, do loads of sketching, and then I used to come out from the icons and I used to imagine that the next painting I see is mine, and I used to shudder, because I realised that I had to work so hard, not just at painting, but what I wanted to do. I didn't understand how I could link it all together. And then I made a whole series of religious paintings. I did Cana's Wedding, I did Last Suppers, but giant big paintings when I was at the Royal College of Art. But no one will ever see them because I threw them all in a skip, the whole lot.
And just while we're on this, but I mean, just to say, I mean, it's fantastic seeing it on this scale. I mean, it's fantastic in the book as well, where it is actually two double spreads, the Flemish painting, 15th century painting, and then this. But I mean, it's just a great example for me of how good you are at drawing. I mean, you know, the line is so exciting, it's so alive, and at the same time so kind of brazen and powerful and strong, and it's just so explicit, and the way you draw breasts really well, and you draw these things that you do that they just sort of has a life to it, and that's that's extraordinary, I think. And most the classic thing, the cliche about someone who's done one of the sort of most famous pieces of conceptual art ever, in a way, something that took conceptual art out of the museum and into people's homes, in a sense. My bed is, pop conceptualism. But, the cliche of conceptual artists is that they can't draw, they can't paint, and they do that. That's certainly what everyone used to say in the 90s. And it's still what the Daily Mail and people say. And it's, it's a kind of... and in some cases, it seems to be true. Like, obviously, I'm not going to name any names, but Damien Hirst can't draw and he can't paint. And he's just better off not doing it. And personally, I think he is a fantastic conceptual artist, but he has, he can't, this other thing, he can't do that. Whereas, I mean, did you even, you say you've never hidden anything, but do you think, did you downplay it to some extent in the 90s that you could actually draw?
Well, in the 90s, so my favourite artist is Edvard Munch. Okay, and I don't know if any of you saw the amazing Munch show that was here a few years ago. It was so well attended, the Munch exhibition here. It was really fantastic. But 20 years ago, they would never have had a Munch exhibition at Tate Modern. It just wouldn't have been palatable. People wouldn't have come. It wouldn't have got, backing. It wouldn't have got finance. People wouldn't have been interested in Munch. Munch would have been seen as not a joke exactly, but not taken seriously as seriously on one level in a kind of Norwegian, European way, but not actually in a grand international scale. And what's interesting now is I think that people are far more interested in a heightened emotional response to things, and people are much freer in saying how they feel about everything. And for some reason, I think in the 90s you had to be a lot more kind of stiff upper lip, you had to be stronger, tougher, you had to sort of fit in with the group a lot more. And I was considered to be within a group which I didn't really fit into. I was always on the outside. So for example, with all the, let's say, YBAs, who are now old age BAs, yeah, they all went to Goldsmiths, most of them, and they were very, very influenced by what had been happening in America, and also what, conceptual and minimal art, whereas I wasn't at all. I was really influenced by Egon Schiele, Edvard Munch, Tate Kollwitz, a lot of expressionism. And at the time when the Frieze art show was on, that Damien curated, and also the Building One shows that Carl Friedman curated, and all the Goldsmiths people were showing there, I was actually in Turkey up a mountain doing watercolours of donkeys, thinking this was my real art, which it was. I wasn't interested in anything contemporary or anything conceptual. I had no understanding of it. It just couldn't even touch me. I didn't get it at all. And then after I left the Royal College of Art, I went and did a part-time Birkbeck philosophy course for 2 years, modern philosophy and the history of philosophy. And within about 6 months of doing this course, I could look at any art, anything, and totally understand it. Totally understand it. Because doing the philosophy course, my whole mind got things that had been blocked before were completely open, and I understood how to see things from other people's perspective, and how to take on thoughts and ideas that weren't mine. By doing that, I could then look at art that before I didn't appreciate. I mean, never jazz music, that was pushing it a bit too far, right? But art, visually, anything, you can show me anything visual and I will be able to, I understand, I can see, obviously there's going to be some grey areas, but on the whole, I can understand what I'm looking at. I have a heightened response to it, because that's all I've ever done, is look at things and be visual and make art. I've never done anything else. Tried to be a waitress, was really useless and bad at it, Was a cloakroom attendant for a while when I was a student, really bad cloakroom attendant. Even jobs to earn money, I was really terrible at, awful. I was kind of slightly belligerent. They'd say to me, "You're late." I'd say, "You're lucky." They'd say, "Why are we lucky?" I'd say, "Well, I nearly didn't turn up." So that's how I was, always about earning money. I've never been interested. What I liked doing was my art. That's all I wanted to do. And so doing the philosophy course made the things really so much more open to me. And then also, this is really good, not having any money in the 90s, being as broke as I was, meant I couldn't afford to have a studio. So my whole art experience had to happen and evolve itself around me in my everyday life. So I was doing this part-time philosophy course, teaching at for Southwark Council, being a youth tutor. It was like schizophrenic lifestyle. And not making any art, just reading books. And it was kind of my post-university and art school days. Actually, I learned so much more than I did. In art school, I just learned literally how to make the stuff and the materials and art history. And then after that, I learned about the glue of putting it all together, and also the combination of the people that I met at that time, whether it be Jay Joplin, Sarah Lucas, Carl Friedman. All of these people were really good external influences on me for things. So the combination of it all was like really, really healthy. So I wasn't just stuck up a mountain painting donkeys. I had that side of me, but also it meant that I could, look at Carl Andre and realise that I could walk across it and see what it felt like, and understand that that's what the art was, not just a visual effect. So, it was interesting, really interesting time for me.
We come back to this is my bed as it was installed recently in Tate, Liverpool, and it's just going to reopen. It's in Turner Contemporary in Margate from next week. But my bed is, I think, something extraordinary. It features in this book along with your new work, because it's something that's changed its meaning over time. And I think this is really when I started to realise that there's so much more going on in your art than I had fathomed. Because, you know, other works from that period of time, some have faded, some are remembered. The thing about this bed is that it changes with time. It changes its meaning in time. When it was first made, it was this brash kind of image of, you know, bad behaviour, whatever. Now, because it's sort of, as it ages, it hasn't spoiled it. It's enriched it. Obviously, time enriches it. And what I also realised was that how aware you are of that. So that when it went on sale at Christie's and came into the Tate collection, it's sort of you were standing by it literally and kind of curating it. And when it goes on view, I watched you in Liverpool actually assembling it bit by bit, and it's like you're assembling a picture of this moment in your past, and you have so it's actually an extraordinarily rich thing. I mean, do you think you have a more kind of vivid memory and a more vivid relationship with your experiences than a lot of people do? I mean,
well, a lot of my friends always get really annoyed about how good my memory is.
Yeah.
Because I've got like a kind of, I can home in on things, and I can so this kind of thing, what was you doing today 5 years ago? It takes me a couple of minutes, but I can tell you. And that really annoys people, because I can say to people, no, you're wrong, it wasn't then, it was this or it was that. And nearly always I'm right. I have a very, it's very, very precise, and it's to do with visually, how I see it. I visually remember everything. When I read, I think, I would like to say, yeah, we all do this, but when I read books that I really enjoy reading, novels, I see them all visually, completely, all the characters, everything. Like, the reason why Madame Bovary is one of my favourite books is when there's this moment when she's pouring this jug of milk, and she's thinking about these things, and she's pouring a jug of milk, and I can see Emma pouring this jug of milk, and see the milk. I know exactly how long it takes. It's like in real time. So that's how I read a book, in lots of real time and like real moments, and three-dimensionally as well, not flat. And I thought everybody did this, but they don't. A lot of people I know who read books that I spoke to read the words. I don't read the words, I see the pictures. So I live in this completely visual world. And also, a number of my friends who are here this evening will tell you this, I have really terrible OCD. So I can have chaos, but there has to be order within that chaos, and I know exactly where it is. And if it gets moved, I can get very angry about things. So, and I'm very, very furniture. In my studio, furniture is not allowed to be moved, and I can go crazy about it. And I wish I didn't. It's a horrible thing, but it's just the way that I am, because I'm so visually precise about everything, and exactly the same about the world that I move in and my world. And this is an interesting thing about France. When Jonathan came down, he realised that I create a world. I don't make a picture, I create a world. My art is a world, and then I create a three-dimensional world. And like my house, my place I live in France, it's like I'm creating a whole giant picture for myself I live in. It isn't just about making an image that you put on the wall that someone takes off and puts on their wall. I'm creating this internal and external world, which I'm hoping before I die joins up to be one place that I feel content in. And I would imagine this is what a lot of people do in their lives, but subconsciously. I do it consciously, and to see, because I need to check how it looks and how I see it. And the bed is like this. Every time I install the bed, it's different. It's one critic, I don't know who it was, you might remember, one critic, it wasn't him, right, wrote about this fact that the bed wasn't real because each time it was different. Well, of course it's different. I'm in a different place. And in Turner, last week, Turner Contemporary, when I was installing it, that people were really surprised that I'd turn the base and the mattress round at a different angle. And I was going, yeah, well, we're in a different room. It's north facing light. I need it to look good. And so at Turner Contemporary, the bed is a completely different angle from this one, a different direction. And actually, it's not when I think about it. It's exactly the same as this one. Yeah. But I can show you another picture where it's very, very different. And in Turner, what I've done is it's very different from this one. It's all sort of strangely pulled, the sheet. Like pulled, and kind of like as if I've got a claw and it's pulled it across and it's tucked in. And I said to the others, I'm not sure about that. It kind of looks a bit raunchy. I was thinking, why does the bed look raunchy in Margate? And I thought, because Margate's a really raunchy place, that's why. So I pick up on the atmosphere of what I am and what I know, and it's about this thing of creating a whole thing, it's not with the bed every time, it's not just about what it looks like, it's the essence of what it is. So with the bed, I'm dealing with memory of myself, memory of the ghost, memory of the past, memory of the experiences that I had in the bed, memory of where I first installed the bed in Japan, memory of when I first saw the bed in my bedroom after being ill, memory of Turner Prize with all the fuss with the bed, and all of that. So there's this kind of all these weird layers with the bed, and it's a bit like the Turin Shroud wouldn't be the Turin Shroud if so many millions of people hadn't looked at it. The bed wouldn't be the bed if so many people hadn't looked at it and had opinions of it. The bed now has its own kind of sovereignty and its own life, which is somehow outside of me. So every time I go to install it, I have to join up with it again and really make it mine. And it's important. But I'm like that with the world about everything. So.
Yeah, I mean, well, obviously you've put it fantastically well, but that's exactly that way of thinking about the bed is extraordinary, and that's, this is an incredibly rich and sophisticated artistic practice that you have. But the paintings, I think it's fairly obvious, probably looking at the slides, but there's not a discontinuity between that and drawing and painting. There's obviously, as you say, if it looks raunchy in Margate, then that's going to be even more obvious, because your art is, in a way, your drawings and paintings are all kind of set in a bedroom or on a bed. I mean, they're all about the body. They're about sex. They're about desire. They're about dreams. They're about
death,
things that happen on the bed, including death. So, in a way, it's the same place and the same human intimacy, I suppose. But I mean, do you see yourself ever creating another sort of huge ready-made like that? Or?
No, I don't. Well, the thing about the bed, he keeps calling it ready-made, but it was the bed that I woke up in after 4 days. So I could have died in that bed, so easily died. And then imagine what would have happened if I died back in 1998. Who would be missing me now? What would be happening? Think about all the things I've achieved and I've done. Been on the school syllabus for about, 10 years or something. I do make a difference in my own way, and that bed made a difference because it kept me here. It kept me alive. It's important. There's an energy in that bed that was like, almost going into another world and then coming back out of that world. And the bed still has that feeling for me. It's important, So the bed isn't just about a shocking piece of art. What was shocking about the art was that people were so shocked by it. And at the time, the sheets weren't that, they weren't yellow and faded like they are now. They were still pretty white with some stains on. If people haven't had a stain on their bed, God help them, But anyway, this is Grand Britannia. This is when I represented Britain in the Venice Biennale 10 years ago, over 10 years, well, 10 years ago it was on. And for those of you that read really bad reviews about it and didn't bother to go and see it, it was actually quite beautiful and quite elegant, which you can see. And this is the main room in the pavilion, and usually people have a really big sort of like powerful thing, and it's kind of like something big going on. But I must be the only person in the whole history of Venice to have shown drawings. And I made the drawings about, I think about a week before they had to be shipped, before the work was shipped. I stayed up for 3 days just making this whole series of diary drawings that were called the Tower drawings. where I delved into my childhood and made all these hundreds of drawings about my childhood and about my memories and what was going on in my head and everything. And then the tower drawings were to do with my dreams about, I hadn't had for a long time, I'd love to have another one. I have these really amazing, profound dreams about towers that are really fantastic, that are so, like, every time I have one, I'm lucky if I've had one, and they're really brilliant. One of them, my old professor at art school, Noel Machin, he died of a brain tumour, and one of these dreams is that Noel says, he comes to me and he says, I have something to show you. You have to come and see this. And I meet him on this kind of like edge of this like riverbank thing, and we go out on this kind of semi-platform, and it's about, I swear to God, about 2,000 meters high, and we're on this spindly thing, and then it keeps going across this river. But he says to me, you can't come any further, you have to stay here. I just need to show you something. And then he shows me this amazing tower. Like this fantastic kind of glass crystal tower with all this light coming through it. And he said, I just want to show you what's possible. And then I wake up and I'm going, oh wow. So I had this thing that I'd like to build bridges, I'd like to build towers. I never wanted to be a mother, but if I had have done, my dream would have been to have had a daughter who was an architect or an engineer that could make bridges. That would make me so, that kind of thing. People say, what's your fantasy? I have a daughter that's an engineer that makes a bridge. It's like, what's yours? Yeah. So, these are, I'm not academic. I'm all of that stuff. I didn't go to school, but if I could build, I would build towers and I would build bridges. And for Venice, I wanted to build towers and bridges for myself. And at the time of Venice, Andrea Rose, who was the person working from British Council working with me on Venice, I had a big problem. I could either do the best of Tracey Emin, which could be, for example, the bed, the blankets, everything like that, the past. But I said to her, I needed to go with the future. What was my future? And she said, what is it? And I said, painting and sculpture and drawing. And she said, do it. And that's what I did at Venice. And it wasn't really appreciated by, the powers that be. But I did what I had to do so I could go forward. And that's why, not many people use the Venice Biennale as their stepping stone. But I did. And I also, when I did Venice and with the opening, I went down the steps. As I came down the steps, it was about, hundreds and hundreds of people and all this flash photography. It was like really crazy. And I was feeling so sad and so strange. And as I came down the stairs, I saw this really old lady come up the stairs next to me. And I looked, and it was me when I'm about 85, 90. And it was me going into the pavilion. And I said, I bet I'll be the only artist to represent Britain twice. So you heard it here first. So all you young people out there, when you come to my next time I represent Britain in the Venice Biennale, and I'm about 90, you'll say, oh, do you remember when you said at Tate? I say, yep. So, and I always think that this Venice was like my opening to my career in a way, my beginning of me being truly the kind of artist that I want to be. And I'm so pleased that I was brave in doing that instead of just doing what was expected of me. So.
And that's what we see in the picture in this book. It's a beautiful, beautiful book. Buy it. You see it unfolding. This is where it starts. It starts with Venice, and then you see how that's actually the beginning of a completely new phase.
Yeah, and this is one of the paintings that I showed in Venice, and this is a brilliant story. Okay, there was a critic. I can say his name, Valdemar Janacek, right? Valdemar in Venice wanted me to do a podcast thing with him or whatever and go round, and I didn't have time. It was my only afternoon off. And I said to him, I can't. He begged me, so I did it. I didn't know what a podcast was. I went round my whole show with him, everything. And then the next week in the Times, he gave me the most horrible, like really, really sad, fucked up, sad, horrible review of Venice. He completely derided it. He didn't like it. He thought it was really bad, everything. I was so upset because not because of his opinion, but because I'd given him my time to do the podcast when it was my only afternoon off in Venice. So I felt quite hurt by that. But this is the revengey bit, you see. And I kind of, I like Valdemar, I've got to say, I like Valdemar, so it's all right. The following year at the Royal Academy, I curated one of the rooms in the summer show. And I put this painting in it. And Valdemar gave my room a splendid, wonderful review. And he said, if the painting she had in that room was so good, if only she'd had paintings of that calibre in Venice, something to that effect, or shown that painting in Venice. I did show that painting in Venice. and it just goes to show, you know, context, you know, and I'm not going to say that Valdemar was completely at fault. It's Venice, it's the people, it's the fuss, it's everything. Context as an artist has a lot, you know, a lot to blame for people's career and how their work is perceived. And I think for me, often, as Jonathan said earlier, often I think I've been seen, and a lot of it is to my own detriment as well. I've been seen in the wrong context, or I've allowed to be seen in the wrong context.
Well, you were kind of the, well, we should start taking questions in a moment, but stepping back, I just want to say something about the garden, about your house, which is, it's beautiful. It's like, it is a world, as you say, it's a magical world. I mean, do you see that evolving? I mean, do you think that might evolve into literally an art garden, and kind of, you know, that eventually gets sort of open to the public and people can explore, and with your sculptures in it and things like that? Last year I decided that I was going to put these 2 giant sculptures, bronzes, in the track coming down to my house, and I was definitely going ahead. I said to Emma, book that, get them made, you know, whatever. And I suddenly thought, what the hell am I doing? People will be able to see them from the road, and at the moment no one knows where I live, and I kind of like it like that. That is part of it, is my privacy and my intimacy with myself and how I live there. That would be a fine idea when I'm dead, but not while I'm alive, totally. So actually, that's one thing. When I'm dead, I really look forward to being that ghostly figure that comes in and curates everything. And of course, that's the thing about an artist who's such your personality. You know, that it's not just being a conceptual. It's essential. It's you, isn't it? That you're kind of, as we're seeing, as we're experiencing. You know, your force of character is, you know, you're the art in a way as well. And I suppose that confuses people about the drawings and the paintings, because people think, you know, she's actually this phenomenon, she's not a painter.
But this painting is like, I think it's like a hurricane. You can see the legs open and the vagina, and then this sort of like massive kind of whirlwind storm coming out. This is quite a big painting. And it looks like it's just done like that, but it wasn't. There's lots of paint underneath. And this is one of my sculptures that I made in the same year, 10 years ago. And that's with neon on it. And that's in LA, I showed that at Gagosian Gallery. This painting I really, really like. It's lost somewhere in China. Yeah, I don't know who's got it. No, we do know who's got it, but I can never see it unless I go to China. I think it's China, or is it Mexico? I can't remember. Right. But this is a really big painting. And we're just going to shoot through these really quickly. So, Liverpool again. Has anyone here had sex in Liverpool? Yay! I've had the best sex I ever had in my life in Liverpool, right? It's just so fantastic, Liverpool. It's just, everyone's snogging on the streets, it's just so good. It's just brilliant. And I've spent a lot of time in Liverpool. I really, really like it. And the people who really like me in Liverpool as well is the Anglican bishop, the deans, the Catholic priest. Every kind of religious religion in Liverpool adore me. So, and some of the things that I've done in Liverpool, this is at the cathedral, the Anglican cathedral, and this is my neon, which is under the giant rose window, and it says, "I felt you and I knew you loved me." And this is a commission from the Church of England, and I have not won hardly any prizes for anything in my life, ever. but I actually won a prize for this. I won the ACE Award, and it's art in sacred places. And I went to the awards because I knew lots of the bishops and the deans and everyone, and they all liked me, and I liked talking to them about, you know, spiritual matters and theology and crucifixion and sex and life and everything. And I really do enjoy talking to these people. And the award ceremony was around the corner from where I live at the Bishopsgate Institute. And I got this phone call saying, "You are coming, aren't you, to the studio?" And I said, yeah, because it's just around the corner. So I didn't even get to, I just popped round, sat there and had a glass of wine, and I was supposed to go to dinner with my friends who are actually sitting at the front here, meet them at dinner, and I suddenly, and they said, "You are staying for the awards, Tracey?" And I said, and I thought, "Oh no, I'll just sit down and then I'll kind of creep out, whatever." And slides come up, this person for music, this for this person for writing, or whatever it was. And then there's the Visual Art Award, the ACE Visual Art Award. And the nominations are, and I'm one of them. And I think, oh, crikey. Oh. I thought, well, I'd better stay, because it will look really bad if I get up and leave, and it will make me look like I'm a bad sport or whatever. And I was sitting there like this, and someone's going, Tracey. And I went, what? They went, "Go and get it." And I was going, "Go and get what?" And for some reason, I had completely cut out and zoned off, and they were calling my name out because I'd won this prize for art in sacred places. I was so happy. I started crying. I've never won anything in my life like that, let alone a prize for art in sacred places. And I couldn't believe it. And also the other nominations were really good. Architecture, I mean, really fantastic. And it was for this neon, "I felt you and I knew you loved me." And I was so pleased that this religious kind of synagogue had looked at my work and understood the whole complete meaning of it. And when I was on stage, I was just kind of like blown away. And they gave me this envelope, and I went off like it, and it said Tracey Emin, winner of the ACE whatever award. I went and I put it on my mantelpiece like that, and I was really happy. And then about 6 months later, the studio gets a phone call, and they're going, "You know, it appears that Tracey hasn't cashed the cheque." And I was going, "What cheque?" And they're going, "The cheque, I didn't realise I actually won this." It was an amount of money as well, which actually I did give to charity, but it was this amount of money. And when I went home and opened the envelope, I was so shocked to see I'd actually won something else as well. I couldn't believe it. I was just so happy with that envelope with my name on. It meant so much. But what I was most happy with was this. If you go to, and this was a poster on all the tube stations as well for Liverpool. I felt really proud, and I felt really proud about the words. "I felt you and I knew you loved me," because obviously it's about the closest moment of intimacy, but it's also about intimacy of the heart, the soul, you know, and understanding what touch is. So I think it was really, really successful. And if you go to Liverpool, it's very beautiful, so to see it.
Do you believe in God? Do you?
Yeah, well, if you turn around and say no, you can spend all night arguing why God does exist and vice versa. I have a profound amount of faith. I believe in the afterlife. I believe that there's lots of things that we can't see. Like at the moment, my cat is really old. He's 17, and he doesn't meow. He screams, and as he's screaming, "Meow!" And he looks like this, and he can really see things. He's looking at things all the time in the room that I know I can't see. And old people, when they're very old, 90, 95, whatever, they wave. You say, "Who are you waving at?" And they'll tell you who they're waving at. Or they'll say, "Oh, he's over here," or "They're coming here," or they see things. Babies, when they're with old people, really old people, have this amazing, or like toddlers, amazing reaction with each other. And they both, if you have a tiny toddler and a very old person, they're both like this, and they're both looking at things that we can't see because their perception is open again. The older person has become open to everything again because they go into the next world. The toddler is open because they've just left the last world. My cat is kind of like that all the time anyway. But I love the idea that there's always, I don't know why I've just said all that, but...
No, I think it's quite informative. And well, that was one in France, there's this. Well, obviously in France, there's your husband, the stone. I mean, Tracey's married to a stone. It's not really you call it the stone. I mean, I call it a rock. It's a huge rock. It's a rocky outcrop, very sort of gnarled and kind of old, and well, obviously old, millions of years old. And that's there in the garden. So that's like a sort of super weird. There's just something supernatural about it, druidic almost. And then there's the sort of trees around it and things, and there's a chair there's a couple of old chairs out there. And then there was a drawing in your studio, which I found, and it was a very haunting drawing, kind of a man sitting in this chair in this landscape. And you said it was your father, and that you'd seen him there.
Yeah.
I mean, he's deceased.
I looked over and I saw my dad just sitting in the chair, literally sitting in the chair. And the last words my dad said to me, the last word he said to me before he died, the last one of his last breaths was France. France. So it didn't surprise me to see him sitting there, but I really saw him there. He was really there. And this drawing as well, it's kind of spindly and strange, but it's very convincing. It's really someone sitting there. It's not my imagination. So I really believe in, I couldn't exist if there wasn't other worlds. I couldn't. I'm totally, and I'm sure scientifically it will be proved that there's just so much that we don't see anymore because we have too much interference with everything. So, and when I was little, I was brought up doing seances and all this kind of thing. So I've always been, my family and everyone's always been open to all of this. So I'm not averse to it. And I'm not afraid of it anymore as well, because when I was younger, I used to be really, really very much afraid.
And I suppose this is another thing, I think, which is in all of the work. It's in all the media that Tracey works in, and I think you'll see it through the book. Is so what you're not only, it's not, you're somebody who lives in this incredibly imaginative, almost visionary world. I mean, which again is the essence of an artist. And after coming back from France, I was sort of electrified, really, after spending time with you.
Literally, almost.
Yeah, literally.
At that point, yeah.
No, but I was. I mean, it was kind of weird, and because I really felt that I'd met a real artist.
I don't know how many of you saw The Guardian yesterday, the piece that Jonathan wrote, but when we met at the airport, when we got off the plane, Jonathan just presumed that we were just getting in a car and driving to my house, but actually we were just driving for 5 minutes to get to the heliport, to get a helicopter to my house. And of course I didn't bother to ask him, are you afraid of heights? Are you afraid of flying? Are you afraid of helicopters? And he just had no choice to get in. And he was petrified. That was number one. And then the next one was the snakes, and he didn't, and he goes, there was a kind of lizard running around in his cottage, and he said to me, oh, at least it wasn't a snake. And I went, oh, I said, well, there are quite a lot of snakes. I said, the biggest one I've seen is about this big kind of thing. And then we go down to the beach, and Jonathan, he says, oh, I haven't been on a beach and swimming for a long time. In fact, I'm not that much of a swimmer. Oh, the water's really nice, so we're swimming out like this. So I'm chatting to him. I was going, come on. And we go right out past out onto the bay. And he goes, I've never swum this far. And I said to him, no, you haven't. And now I'm going to drown you for all the bad reviews from ever looking at me. That's the whole point of this trip. And he wrote about this yesterday. So very fun.
Actually, the sort of slight questions in a second, but the slight aftermath to that was this summer because there were forest fires very near where you live.
Yeah, really close. Yeah,
really close. I was actually quite. I was actually quite. I did actually email you and got this. It was like you obviously just didn't see. So, oh yeah, there's a lot of smoke. I just thought she's probably shouting the fire, just yelling at it or something.
It was very, very close, actually.
Yeah, no, it must have been, yeah.
But you have to be philosophical in that situation. It's like when my mum died last year, I couldn't stop my mum dying. It didn't matter what happened. I couldn't stop it. There was nothing I could do. And in life, there is situations there is nothing you can do about it. You just have to accept the situation. And sometimes the fight could make things worse. But the fire is, luckily no one was hurt. So, but this is Margate, look. I never stop loving you. This is Margate, my hometown. We can do the questions. Let me just get through the slides, right?
Yeah.
The book. Remember the book? Which, Ooh, bottom. This is me. This is in 2000 or 1999 or 2000. This is brilliant. I had this made in a poster and I had it in a window, and then the British Movement Party wrote to me saying, obviously you're of us like-minded, you think like we do and you're like-minded, we'd really like to have a meeting with you. And I said, obviously you just didn't see how brown my bum is, did you? And it was good this, because when it was made into this billboard poster, I had to cover up my bottom, my bum hole, right? Which you can't actually even see in that photo, but I had to cover it up. And there was, I cannot tell you the discussion with the Hayward Gallery about which letter was going to go over my bum, right? Because for a long time it was the Y, which was really funny. But it's good, I did that. It was just off Brick Lane. Imagine doing that now, running down Brick Lane with a Union Jack naked. Imagine doing it then even, yeah. So, and that flag is then, I've used it on one of the blankets. This was my show at the Hayward, part of it. Hayward. This is called The Family. Mother, children, father. Hayward. This is my lake in France. This is from my show, The Vanishing Lake. And this is when the lake isn't very full. The lake goes right up to the top of that ridge there, which is like a dam, and then goes right over. This is my vanishing lake. So in France, I have a lake. Not lake, I have this bowl of dry dust in the summer. And then around this time of year, it starts filling up. And it stays there till about March or April. And there's a waterfall. And I always think it's a symbol of my life.
Tate, questions? So, first question, anybody? Questions for Tracey?
I just want to get round to a painting. The old suitcase is the suitcase I left home with when I was about 15, and the Samsonite suitcase is the case I left home with when I was 33. So both these suitcases represent a time in my life when I decided to make change. And then I chained them together to combine them as one thing. But I never intended to. I showed them the same time as the bed, but the suitcases to me were always something different. And then when Charles Saatchi bought the bed, he just presumed that he had the cases. We had a really big argument about it. Massive. And the more we argued about it, the more I liked him. And in the end, I went, oh, right, okay, you just take them. Because by that time, I felt that they really belonged together. And they do. And somehow, each time I display the bed, the cases move around, like they have their own life as well. And they kind of keep the bed in check. And it's really interesting that it's about leaving. Both the cases are about leaving. The bed is about leaving. The bed is about leaving this world. And the cases were about leaving who I was to change my life at a certain time. And the other thing as well, one of the cases is a second-hand case that I bought at a jumble sale when I was about 15 or something. And the other case is a Samsonite case, which at the time cost a lot of money. You know, it was kind of a luxury item. So and the bed, people always said to me, what did you do after you sold the bed? I said, I went straight to John Lewis, bought some really beautiful sheets, really beautiful pillows. It's about, I will change my life. I will be determined to do this. And does anyone listen to that programme Within Our Time with Melvin Bragg? Well, the other week there was one on Kant, and it was such a fantastic argument. It's one of the best ones that I've heard. And I really agree with this theory about, you know, I am free. I am free to make my own decisions. And that's important. So the case is, well, there's a contradiction because how free are we? We always stick to within doctrine and what is expected, but you can break away from that. So the cases are changed, but yet I was free to make that decision to leave.
More questions?
I had a question about the vulnerability aspect of your work, and I wondered if the vulnerability element is in character, so is it a service to the viewer, or if it's catharsis? And in follow-up, do you still feel vulnerable now that you're no longer this young woman on the edge?
I feel more vulnerable because I'm actually a middle-aged woman on the edge, which I'm telling you is not as good. Number one. Secondly, there is nothing fake about my vulnerability. When you're vulnerable, you're vulnerable. You know, my mum died last year. It makes you really weak. When you go out in the world, you're not tough anymore. You know, you could break any moment, cry any moment. Vulnerability isn't an affectation that you put on to use in your work. It's something which you have to live with and deal with. So for being cathartic, yes. The catharticism within my work is what tells me who I am, and it's the dialogue that I have. So I'm not happy making work unless I learn from it. That's what I use it for. And I don't mean this in terms of like basket weaving. It's not basket weaving. It is something, it's like it's an argument that I have, a fight that I have. And it was really good doing the philosophy courses that I did because I learned how to use 2 or 3 parts of my mind and think about the same thing in different ways. And often when you're dealing with paint and a flat surface that was once a flat surface, what goes through your mind when you're dealing with that stuff is like having the most hardcore, deepest, philosophical, emotional argument with yourself about everything. And so I learn lots about myself as I'm working. And if I don't, then I'm not satisfied, and I wouldn't want to be an artist. I don't want to make nice things. I don't want to make decoration. I don't want to make design. Other people are really good at that. Let them do that. I need to do what I'm doing, this kind of weird, lonely pursuit of trying to understand who I am. And if I can be honest with myself, it shows within the work, and then other people get something from it. So a good example of this was the tent, everybody I ever slept with from 1963 to 1995. One of the best comments that I have about that tent is someone goes into the tent and then they come out and they think of everybody they ever slept with. It's not, I don't care, you know, my names in the tent are of no importance to anyone else. Your names are important, your experience is important. And if my work can open up other experiences for people, make people more aware of their self, then I'm doing a really good job. It's not about me, it's about what happens after me.
More questions?
No? Yes? There's a mic up there.
Hello.
Hello.
I have a more technical question. So earlier you talked about scale. So when you put together a composition, do you measure or do you just go ahead and do it?
Oh my God, measure? No, I don't measure anything. I think, oh God, I need another canvas. I'll pull that one out and I'll start working on it and I go, oh my God, I've just fucked that up. I'll get rid of that one. I'll do a smaller one. I go, oh no, I don't know what to do now. I know, I'll just put some paint on these tiny ones. Then I'll start these 6 tiny ones. Then I'll go back over to the really big one again. So I don't go, I need a really big painting for so-and-so, I need to fill this space or whatever. I'm in a really good position. I do whatever I want to do, when I want to do, and how I want to do it. And my studio will tell you, sometimes I'm offered like really amazing commissions or things like that, and I kind of, and even if I say I'm going to do them, I don't. I kind of fuck it up on purpose and don't hand it over. So I'm not interested in doing anything to scale for someone else that is measured. But one of my favourite advice of all time that I've ever been given is measure twice, cut once. And that's the best thing I can say about measuring anything. So I'm quite thorough. But when I'm working, I'm very free and unprocessed. So for example, supposing, I don't know, I never do this. Someone wants, like, you know, someone would love a pink painting. I will go and do the biggest, blackest, ugliest painting in the whole world. That's just the way I am. I do what I want to do and however I want to do it. So my life is measured to a degree, but definitely not my work. It's not calculated in any way.
Next question.
Can I just explain this quick? This is like a bridge light thing. This is at Chateau Lacoste in the south of France. It's very large, and this is my work. So I just want to show you, going back to the daughter that makes bridges and engineers. Part of that daughter is within me, and I try. And this was very successful. It's called Cat in a Barrel. And that's what you see when you look inside. It's a self-portrait. I'll keep asking questions, though.
Do you find or have you found throughout your career your relationships with the opposite sex to be a distraction or an inspiration to your art?
I think did you say my
your relationships with the opposite sex a distraction or an inspiration to your art in general?
I think my relationship to sex, full stop, is a distraction. Full stop. It's got nothing to do with the opposite sex, same sex or anything. I just think sex, full stop. Just honestly, like when I was younger, I just, you know, if I wanted to fuck someone, I'd just go and do it. I had that, I'm talking about really young now, 13, 14, 15. I was in the room, like this person, go and have sex with them. That's what I was like. And if I get on that track now, I promise you, I wouldn't do any work. I wouldn't be here doing a talk. I would be in bed.
But it has seemed a lot of your artwork just seemed to be inspired from that source.
But it's not, is it? Because I'm making work. I'm in my studio making work. I'm not fucking anyone. I'm not that distracted, am I? I made a painting once of being fucked up the arse, and it's just this really sort of simple linear painting. And I said, in truth, I'd much rather not be painting, you know? But I am painting. I'm in the studio working. And I think I've had 3 really fantastic relationships in my life, 3 really amazing ones, full relationships. And I wish in a way that I could have married these 3 people and said, these 3 people, because in a way I did marry them. They're still really good friends to me. They still really support me. They know me inside out, upside down, back to front. I trust them. And they were fantastic relationships in lots of ways. But on the whole, it's not my strong point. I have the most wonderful friends. I have the most wonderful lifestyle with all my friends and everything. But I just couldn't imagine being in a relationship and saying, oh, I have been in a relationship where I just didn't go home, you know, because I was at the studio painting. You can do this 2 nights, 3 nights, 4 nights. You do it for 4 years, that person gets a bit bored. You say, I'm getting on a plane, I'm going off to do another show, I'm going here, I'm doing that, this. You know, I had one partner who said, it was really good. He said it didn't matter what problem he had, my problem was always more important. And it's true, because that's what I deal with, that's what I work with. And I also think that I could never censor myself, ever, in any way. I couldn't, otherwise I wouldn't be able to make the work that I do. But if I met the right person, and it was balanced and good, then it would be possible. But for the last 15 years, it hasn't been possible. I lived alone for 15 years. I think that's quite, apart from docket, I think that's quite a long time. I haven't had any kind of sex for 5 years. And then last time that wasn't penetrative. It wasn't I didn't see the person again. it isn't what drives me. It isn't all the things we're talking about, all the work you see. Everyone always relates because the bed looks dirty and grungy or this or that, or because I swear or whatever it is. That isn't what drives me. You know, faith, love, God, spirituality, all of those things first is what drives me. You know, and this week I went to see Rachel Whiteread's show at Tate and the queer art show at Tate Britain. And Rachel's show, by the way, is fantastic. If any of you haven't seen it, go and see it. It was like amazing. And there's a project room at Tate where you can go in and there's all like bits of paper and feltic pens and paint, and you can paint on the wall, and it's about gender and identity. And I just picked up this big black magic marker, and then I did this drawing of this sort of cat woman, and I just wrote, I'm not an animal, you can't fuck me. And then I just walked out again, but it was kind of life-size drawing. And I actually signed it, Tracey Emin, 2017. And I was kind of quite shocked myself. But, you know, I think when I was... and my friends went to Tate today, and some kid has put some green sticky tape all over it and drawn something else quite interesting or whatever, I don't know. But it's really funny. But, I think Tate were quite shocked by that. I don't think they even know, actually, but I heard... Anyway. But the point is... You know, when I was younger, I was visceral. I was like an animal. Everything was sensual. Everything was, you know, and I have worked, you know, someone annoyed me, I could slap them. You know, if I was angry, I'd scream. Everything was emotional and on the surface with emotion. And the same with relationships and sex and everything. It was all like, just like being an animal. And all my life, I worked constantly hard not to be that animal. And being an artist and believing in the things that I do is the complete antithesis to being an animal. I have a conscience that I use constantly in my everyday life with my work. There you are.
Good. More questions?
Hello. Oh, hi. You've spoken about artists that have influenced you and interested you, such as like Munch and Sheila and people like that, and Van der Weyden. But I was interested in what kind of contemporary artists and painters that you're sort of interested in now.
Okay, artists that I like, that my generation, a bit younger, is David Ahmed, who's a New York artist who does these amazing sculptures that scare the life out of me, and I love his work. Rebecca Warren, who opens up at St Ives next week, she's my favourite artist of my generation. He's older than me, but George Baselitz, I really, really love his work, his paintings. Everything I like is really expressive and very tactile. So there's three. Is that good enough? All right.
Who's next?
Hi. So all of your works, like your drawings that are really expressive and like not censored, like you said, you know, you can't be censored with your work. How did you initially get past that with the whole kind of social ideology of what a woman should be and how you should present yourself, especially as a female artist?
It's a brilliant
at the time
question.
that you were up and coming.
So when I was at art school back in the 80s, I was at Maidstone College of Art, and Maidstone was really politically kind of hardcore. Like everything was taught with a Marxist doctrine. You know, it was like we weren't allowed to have the Sun newspaper, we weren't allowed to eat Kit Kats. You know, there was all these kind of rules and everything. And we had to do a corridor show in the first year. In the corridor show, you put your work up. And actually, I had these really giant drawings of myself masturbating with a pot of tea, not with a pot of tea, with a tea tray and everything, looking in a mirror, like that's what you do, and had them, pin them all up. It's my corridor show. And the women's group got very angry and threatened to tear my drawings down off the wall. Even though I was a woman, and even though I had a very reasonably good argument about them, and it could make actually quite a good discussion for women to have, say female masturbation and drinking tea or whatever you want to, ladies drinking tea, afternoon tea. We could talk about Victorian women, you know, different eras of women, fashion, you know, whatever you want to talk about. That wasn't up for discussion. It was like I was degrading women, and the drawings, either I took them down or they were going to rip them off the walls. So I just walked out of college and just didn't come back until I got a phone call saying that they were still on the wall. And that's the way things should be. I'm not going to argue that kind of thing. When I first when I'm interviewed for art school, I was so nervous. I stayed up the night before making a dress out of a curtain, out of some 1950s curtains, and I painted all my fingernails were all black from all printed ink, so I painted all my nails dark red so you couldn't see all the dirt underneath. And then, because I'd been up all night, my hair was all sort of grungy, so I just back-combed it all into a really big bouffant and had like these big sort of dangly lime green earrings, and slung my stiletto heels on and marched off to Maidstone College of Art. And one of the questions in my interview was, what did I think of feminism? And this was in the height of the 80s, where feminism was really like a hardcore, Greenham Common, you know, really hardcore language. And when they asked me this question, what did I think of feminism? I said, I didn't. And they said, what do you mean you don't think about it? I said, I just do what I want to do. And a lot of course I am a feminist, and you know, everybody knows that. But I think a lot of women are put off of being feminine because they have to have certain views and certain rights. And in the art world, you know, for a long time you wouldn't be taken seriously unless you were sort of wearing Dr. Martens and a pair of dungarees. And I haven't, you know, I'm not always like that. And the same with my work. And also the thing that challenges my work is that, you know, this is me. This is me. I haven't got a beard on, and I'm not lecturing after some sort of like pubescent girl in my studio. I'm not like that. That's what men were doing, you know, 100 years ago. It's really easy to be successful if you're going to fuck half the world over. Really easy. And as a woman, I'm not going to fuck other women over, am I? I'm not going to do that. But a lot of male artists have done that within history. But no one talks about that because they're great artists.
We've got time for one more question.
Hi. Could you talk a little bit about your collaboration with Louise Bourgeois?
Where's that question come from? Here. I was friends with Louise, and we collaborated before she died. We did a series of prints together, which is a suite of prints, which recently was shown at White Cube, their Dreamers Awake show. And I feel very lucky to have known Louise and to have worked with her. So Louise knew Leger, she knew Monet, she knew, and it's so strange. She's like from 100 years ago, and then the artists she knew were 100 years before that. I really hope when I'm old, I'll meet a much younger artist and be able to work with them or know them, and then they can take my work on to the next 100 years. I think it's important. It's like being a relay runner holding a baton. Louise gave me a baton that I took, and I'm grateful for that, really. So.
Well, that's a good place to end. And we're going to have we need to stop for Tracey to sign books. I think that's an appropriate place to end, because I think Tracey does indeed continue the tradition of Louise Bourgeois. And the other thing is about male artists and women artists. I mean, the amazing thing is, you know, this amazing place where Tracey lives, and it's where Cézanne and Matisse and Picasso were, you know, it's like Picasso's landscape, I mean, and all these macho men, and it's amazing that, you know, there's a woman has moved in, as it were, and also someone who works on that level, that kind of big imaginative level of what an artist is and what art is. And I think Tracey's a great artist, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Can I just have the last word? I think people might have heard me say this before. The difference between men and women, and the difference between male artists and female artists, is men just have one big, massive ejaculation within their career, and women just keep coming again and again and again. Hmm.